Okay, good morning. So we're about halfway down 38A. We are on the fifth wide line. Lefikach. So the Mishnah had said, therefore man was created as a single being, who was created alone. Tana Rabbanan. Adam Yichidi Nivra. Man was created as a single being. Umipnei ma, why? Shleyo meaning omrim haru yeshuyas b'shamayim, so that not to give an opening for heretics to say there are many powers, many deities. In other words, if many people would have been created simultaneously, it would be an opening to say, oh, Ken was created by this god, and somebody else was created by this other god, and so on. So therefore, one person can only have been created by one god. Davar acher, another reason, because of the righteous people and the wicked people. Tzaddikim should not say, "Listen, we're from a pious upbringing, and so it's our birthright, and we don't have to try very hard." Or Shaim Amrim Anu b'nei Rasha, and so that wicked people shouldn't say we're from a line of wicked people, so what hope is there for us? No, everybody comes from the same ancestor, and everybody has the choice to be good or evil. Davar acher, another reason, because of families, strife between families. So as not to have strife between families. In other words, by saying, we have better yichus than you. Our family comes from a better lineage. Everybody comes from the same lineage. Even though a man was created as a single being, and we all have a common ancestor, and still you find that people say we have better yichus than you. So the Niru Shnayim Alachas Kama V'Kama. If we didn't even have that, if we didn't even have a common ancestor, certainly it would be even worse that people would be fragmented by family. Davar Achar, another reason, because of thieves. Thieves. Everybody comes from the same ancestor, and yet people steal from essentially their cousins, their family members. Nivru Shnayim Alachas Kama Kama. If there were two, if we came from different ancestors, then certainly all the more so people would take advantage, would cheat people from other families. Okay. Ooh, lahagid gudulaso.
So we say, no, at Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, we each person should think of himself as a Benoni instead of a Rasha or a Tzaddik. So a
Right.
person puts him. I was just thinking about that when we talk about Rashayim versus Tzaddikim, we think of ourselves as Benoni.
Yeah, exactly right. So also to teach us about God's greatness, and the Tanna Rabbanan and the rabbis teach an identical brayso. To teach the greatness of God. Uh, Humans, if they make a coin, they mint a coin, so from a single mold, then each one is identical. Everyone is a copy of Adam Rishon. Yet everybody looks different. Shenemar tishapech kechomer chosam v'yisyasvu k'molavush. Your mold, that is the mold of people, is transformed to clay when you die, and they'll stand up like clothing. So um, the use of the word chosam indicates that people are made from a mold, just like a coin, and yet they look different. I mean, why are we designed that way so we don't look identical? So a person should not see a beautiful home or a beautiful woman and say, Shalihi, it's mine. Like, if all women look the same, then cheating would be easier. Shenemar v'yimona mereshayim oram uzroa rama tishaver. As the pasuk says, it will be withheld from the wicked their light, and the high arm, meaning the brazen arm, will be broken. In other words, by having this is a continuation of the pasuk above, I think, right? Yeah. So by having um, different, by being from a mold and yet different, so Zroa Rama, the high-handed actions of the wicked people are broken. Tanya, you have a brisa. Hi, Rameir Omer. Rameir used to say, "B'shlosh
You could
d'varim adam
say
yishtanim
here with
chaveram."
regarding if someone says the house is mine, woman's mine, there's no one could argue with him, right?
Yeah, if
If the
every house
person
looked the same, if every
the person
house,
could say that's mine, it's mine, and there would, but you could think, well, no one would argue with him, but I would think that there could be a lot of arguments. Every person would say that this house is mine. There could be fights that could break out. There could be disagreements, arguments. It could be a chaotic world.
yeah, that's I think that's what it's saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Tanya, hi, Rameir Omer. Rameir said, "B'shlosh d'varim adam yishtanim chaveram." People are different from each other in three ways: B'kol, b'mara, v'das, their voice, their appearance, and their intelligence or their thinking. B'kol, b'mara, mishum erva. Uh, uh, they're different in the sound of their voice and their appearance to prevent immorality. Which if everybody looked the same, then immorality would be a lot more common. Um, Sexual immorality, that is. Ubedas mivnei gazlanim v'chacham sanin. And in the way you think, everybody's different, so that nobody else knows what you're thinking. Like nobody else knows when you leave the house, and they could break into your house. Tanaraban,
And
or
the
or where
twins
you keep your jewelry.
and twins look the same, right?
Yes, the identical twins pretty much look the same. Yeah,
I mean, they're different in Bedat and Bakol, but their appearance is the same. Well, I mean, it's it can be very
exception
hard.
that proves the rule, perhaps.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it can be very difficult. I mean, how many stories are there where
Yeah,
people
identical twins.
and
Yeah, so that actually demonstrates the point, right? If you can substitute for somebody else, you can be up to all kinds of mischief.
how many stories are there about a woman decides she will date someone instead of her sister, and the man
Hmm.
doesn't know, the man doesn't, or vice versa, the two brothers, the woman doesn't know the difference.
Right. So that proves the Gemara's point. I mean, it challenges it in that, yeah, well, but not everybody looks different. Identical twins don't look different, but it proves the point of the stories that one encounters proves the point that if everybody did look the same, then these kinds of trickery would abound.
We have Yaakov and Esav. They were twins.
Hmm.
Were they identical? I don't
No,
think
no, Yaakov and Esau look different.
they did. They were not identical. But Rachel and Leah, weren't they twins?
They weren't twins, but they well, one disguised herself as the other. No, they weren't twins because they had
Oh,
different appearance, right?
right,
Ene Leah Rakos, Rachel
right,
Haisayafas Horvatos Mara.
right. That's right.
You want to think of a twin swapping story? Um, think of popular movies. It's more productive. I think you'll find it better. Um, okay, Tana Rabbanan. Adam Nivra B'Erev Shabbos. Man was created on Friday. Umipnei um, and why? Shelo Yominu Omrim Shutaf Hayel HaKadosh Baruch Hu B'Maaseh Bereshis. That a man was a partner to God in creating the world. So if man had been created first, then you would have said, and man went ahead and created, some of the rest of the world. Davar Acher, Shem Tazuach Dato Alav. If you become arrogant, Omer Lo Yitush Kadoch B'Maaseh Bereshis. You can say to somebody, "You're not so important. Even the smallest gnat was created before you." Another reason, miyad, so that he would have the opportunity to go right into Shabbos to to a day of rest that was mandated by God. Another reason, so he should have something to eat right away. In other words, everything would be prepared for him. Mashal melech basar v'dam. Analogies to a king. Shabana paltrin v'shichlalan v'hiskin suda, that he builds a palace and he furnishes it and he prepares a feast, and then you invite the guests. So the same way, God created the whole world for man, as it were, and then created man to enjoy it. Shenemar, Chachmas Bansa Besa. Chatzva Mudei Shiva. Wisdom has built her house and dug out or built 7 pillars. Tavcha Tivcha Mascha Yena, and she slaughtered the meat and poured the wine. Af Archa Shulchana, set the table. Shulchan Arasa Tikra, sends out her maids to call out Al Gabe Morome Karis, from the heights of the city. So Chachmas Basabe, so what is the wise women built a house? Zumi Nasa Shol Kadosh Baruch Hu. That's God's attribute. Shabaras Kol Kula B'Chachma, created the whole world with wisdom. Chasva Medeh Shiva, and uh, and created these 7 pillars. Elu Shivas Yemei Bereshis, that's the 7 days of creation. Tav Chativcha Mas Chayena Af Archa Shulchana, slaughtered the meat, mixed the wine, set the table. Elu Yamim and the Haris V'Chol Sarchei Olam. These are the oceans, the rivers, everything that's all the things that are needed in the world. And then Shulchan Tikva. Then she sends her maidens and calls out Za'adam Chava. That's Adam and Chava. That's when God invites the guests after everything's ready. So Algape Merome Karas. What is the reference to the heights of the city? Rabbi Baruch Rabbi asked, Ksiv Algape. It's written on top of the heights, meaning Adam was on top. Ksiv Al Kise, and elsewhere it's written, or later in the same passage, the man is sitting on a chair. So is he on top, like lording over everything, or is he sitting back in a chair? Which is it? Bachila agape. First he's on top. L'basof al kisei, but then he's taken down a notch by eating the fruit of the tree, by sinning and being exiled. So then he's only on the chair. Then he's only like sitting at the table. He's not standing at the head of the table, as it were. And then the pasuk continues, Mi pesi yoser hena chasar lev amrlo. Whoever is foolish, let him turn aside here. If he has no understanding, she told him. What does that mean? Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu, God said, Mi pita'ol lezeh. Who? So pesi really means a fool or someone who's simple, but it's also related to the word to seduce somebody. Who seduced Adam to eat from the tree? Isha Amrala was a woman, the woman, uh, um, and she's the one that's considered Chasar Lev Amrala. She's the one who lacks understanding. Told him. Um, D'chsiv noif isha chasar lev. And how do I know that chasar lev, someone who lacks understanding, is a woman? Because another pasuk says, one who commits adultery with a woman is someone who lacks understanding. So in other words, it's akin to the seduction of Eor, to Adam being together with Chava, and Chava convincing him to eat the apple is akin to a situation of adultery. In other words, if the woman hadn't been there, he wouldn't have been tripped up. Tanya, we have a brisa.
Don't tell that to women's groups.
Not about to, but they do learn daf yomi, so I think it's unavoidable. Hi, Rameir Omer. Rameir said, "Adam Rishon Mikol Ha'olam Kulo Hutzvar Afaro." Man was created with dust that was gathered from around the whole world. Shenamar Golmi Ra'u Einecha. Your eyes saw my golem, my lumped form. Uksiv ki Hashem elav mashotos b'chol haaretz. And it's written that God's eyes wander the whole world, sweep over the whole world. So Einayim is used in both those psukim. So it indicates that the golem of man, the lump, the shape of the lump of clay made that man was made of, was gathered from Meshotos Kol, from all over the world. Amar Moshe Mishmei Rav. Adam Rishon Gufo mi Bavel. Man was created, his body was created from Bavel. Varosham Eretz Yisrael, his head from Israel. Vavara of Mishar Haratzos, and limbs were from other countries. Agvosov, what about his behind? Amravacha me Akra de Agma, from this place called Akra de Agma. Um, that's apparently a low-lying valley in Babel. Not sure what the point of that is. We'll go look it up
Rashi
in
says
the
it's
in the
very
Marsha.
deep, very
Yeah,
amokmo.
so that's your bottom is very. I don't know. I'm not sure what it's trying to tell us there. Amar Yochanan bar Chanina, shtei masrei shos have hayom. The day is 12 hours long. We're talking about the day of the sixth day of creation. Excuse me. Darishon Utzrafaro. In the first hour, the dust was gathered to form man. Shnia Nasagolim. In the second hour, the form was made. Shlishi Nimtuchu Evarav. Then his third hour, his limbs were stretched out. Revis Nizrakov Neshama. In the fourth hour, he got his soul. Chamishi Samanal Niraglov. In the fifth hour, he stood up. Shishis Kar Shemos. In the sixth hour, he called names to all the animals, as described in the second chapter of Bereshit. Shvis Nizdag Volochava. In the seventh hour, he was mated with Chava. Shminis Alu Lamita Shnayim V'Yardu In the eighth hour, the two went to bed together, Adam and Chava, and four came out. In other words, they had the two children, Cain and Hevel. Cheese nitzava shlolechem and in the ninth hour, they were commanded not to eat from the tree. Asiri sarach in the 10th hour, they did eat from the tree. Achas asrei nidon in the 11th hour, they were judged. And shem asrei nitrod v'halachol. The 12th hour of the first day, the story was over of Gan Eden. He was already exiled. Shadamar. Adam Bikar Bal Yalim, that man doesn't stay in a state of glory overnight.
What is the? I remember there's a. I'm just curious. There's a Gemara somewhere that tells us how old Adam was. Basically, on that day, he wasn't born as a
As
baby,
a
one
baby,
day old. He was born at a certain age, right?
as an adult, yeah. Uh-huh.
How old was he? Do you remember?
No, I don't.
Is it like 40 or 25 I remember 24 or 40 or.
I don't remember.
And here we're
Amar Rami
talking about
Bar
forming his parts, and the limbs and the soul,
Well,
but
it's not like a typical human development, right?
no.
Amarami Barchama, and Chayara Shaletas Adam, wild animals don't rule over man. Elim Kain Nidmalo Kabahema, unless man looks like an animal to this wild animal. Shanara Nimshal Kabahema Nidmu. The rest of that pasuk is Nimshal. He's ruled over when Kabahemas Nidmu, when you look like an animal. Amar Rav Yudah Marav. B'shashak bikesh HaKadosh Baruch Hu liras Adam, when God wanted to create man, bara kas achas shel malachei hasharis. He created a group of angels. Amar lahem, and he said to them, "Rasanchem nas Adam b'tzalmenu." What do you think? Should we create man in our image? Amar lefanav, they said, "Ribono shel olam, ma masav? What's man going to do? What's this man going to be like?" Amar lahem, kachu kach masav. This is what man is going to be like. Amar lefanav, they said, "Ribono shel olam, ma enosh kitzis karenu." So what do you need such a creature for that's so flawed? Uben Adam Kisuf Kedenu, or the Son of Man, that you should pay any attention to him. So, in other words, they advised him not to create man. Hoshi Esba Katana, my name was Rafam. God stuck out his little finger and burned them all up. V'chein Kashnia, and then he created another group of angels, and the same thing happened. Kashlishis, and then the third one, Amrlu, of the third group of angels, they wised up. They said, Rivan Shalom, Rishon Shamrul Fanecha, the first two groups that you asked, and they gave you their advice not to create man, Mahawilu. What did they accomplish? Kolam Kulo Shalchahi. The whole world is yours. Say, do whatever you want to do. What are you asking us for? What do you need our agreement for? It's very interesting, by the way, that this you think about, like, are they thinking about God's will, and if God can do whatever he wants, you know um should what would we advise, or what do we think God should do? When you ask that question, this would answer clearly that you can't tell God what to do. Like it's a silly question. If you say the wrong thing, you'll be destroyed. So why say anything rather than why say what you think God wants you to say? It's better not to say anything. Um,
Why is he asking for advice?
why indeed is he asking for advice? Great
Why is
question.
God asking for advice?
Great question. Not clear. Kevin Shigia Lanshidar Malvan. And then you get to the generations of the flood and the dispersion, the Tower of Babel, Shemasen Milko calling that they were wicked. Amr Lafanav, the angel said, Lo Aha. You see, the first groups that you destroyed, they were right. Amaleni said, "Vazikna anihu vaseva niesbal." God said, "Until old age, I'm there, and until it's repeated." In other words, God says, despite man's evil inclination, He's still going to stick with man. So this is more a question of God's faith in man than man's, faith in God, or trying to understand the ways of God. Amar Vina Marav. Adam Rishon Misofa Olam Yasofa Haya. Man was, reached from one end of the world to the other. Shenemar Lamina Yom Asher Bar Elohim Adam al Haaretz Lamitzei Hashemayim V'Yad Kitzei Hashemayim. From the day that God created man on the earth and to the edge of the heavens. From one edge to the other. But once man sinned, God placed His hand on man and shrunk him. You formed me front and back, and then you put your hand on me. Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Lazar said man was so tall, he was from the earth up to the heavens. Same pasuk from the he interprets this as from the earth to the sky. Kevin Shasarach, once he sinned, he Baruch Hu Yado Olav, Shnamar Achavar Kadim Sartani. When he sinned, then the same pasuk, God put His hand on man and shrunk him. Kashu Kraya Adade. So, like the Gemara is pointing out, like which is it? Does man go from the earth to the sky, or from one end of the sky to the other end of the sky? Like, what's going on here? Where it says it's the same thing. It's the same distance, right? The From one edge of the earth to the other is the same as from the earth to the heavens. I don't know what that's supposed to mean either. Man spoke, Adam spoke Aramaic. Shnemar Velima Yachru Reacha El, as it says, and to me, to man, how dear are our Reacha. And Reacha means your thoughts in Aramaic. So in other words, we're interpreting this Reacha as an Aramaic word, and it's put in the mouth of Adam Rishon. Find Yam Reish Lakish. This is
There's a
what
Hebrew
Reish
word.
Lakish
There is
says.
a Hebrew word, reyach, as well, right?
Yeah, yeah. So that's correct. But the meaning here is not Reacha means in Hebrew means a friend. Apparently, in Aramaic, it
Right.
means an idea or a thought. And that fits better in the pasuk. Find Yam Reish Lakish. This is what
But
Reish Lakish
what's
says.
Rashi mean? I'm sorry. What does Rashi mean? Batar galmi ruei necha. I'm not sure what he means there.
Um, 1 second.
Which you should they will see his eyes after uh, batar.
After the pasuk we quoted before, Galmi Roenecha, Ksiv Osamizmar Uvisir Salam Adaber. In other words, Rashi is connecting this to the previous passage
Oh,
that is about the creation of man.
oh, okay, all right.
um,
Behind Odama,
By
Reshlash.
Reish Lakish, this is what Reish Lakish says. My deceives, as Sefer told us Adam. What does it mean? This is the book of the generations of Adam. Malame Shero Kadosh Baruch Hu Dor Dor V'Darshav. God showed him not a book, but the following generations, right? Every succeeding generation, and it's darshim. teachers. Dar Dar Chachamav, every generation has wise men. When he got to the generation of Rabbi Akiva, Samach Basarasa V'Nisasev Misaso. Adam was happy about his Torah, and he was saddened about his death. Right, he died a martyr's death, as you know. Um, Amar, he said, "V'lima yakru el," and to me, how dear or how deep or whatever sublime are your thoughts, God. In other words, he couldn't understand how Rabbi Akiva could be so great and suffer such a difficult death. Oh, excuse me. The Amar Ravina Marav. Adam Rishon min haya. Adam Rishon was a heretic. Shneimar vayikra Hashem Elokim al Adam vayomer lo ayeka. God called out to him and said, "Where are you?" Meaning, on not talibcha, not where are you physically, but where are you ideologically? Right? Like, what happened to you? You disobeyed God's orders. So he's asking them, like, what happened to your ideology, to your theology? Rabbi Yitzchak Amar, Moshe Arber also haya. Adam was trying to reverse his circumcision. Now, of course, he wasn't circumcised, but the idea is that he was born circumcised, and he tried to uncircumcise himself, as it were. Siv
Where do we
hacha.
learn it? We learn Noach was born circumcised, right? Where do we learn Adam was born circumcised?
Um,
Isn't that Noach we learn was
it's a
born?
medrash, apparently.
I think we learn Noach was,
Yeah, I think we learned that. I think there's a medrash about Moshe also, if I'm not mistaken.
but
Um,
the mitzvah wasn't given until Abraham.
yeah, right. Um, Ksiv hacha vehema ke'adam avrubris. One pasuk says they're like a man, and uses the word adam that violate the covenant. Ksiv hasam es brisi hefar. What is the bris? The bris is my covenant, um, the covenant with God for the Jewish people anyway is circumcision. Rav Nachman Amar Kofer beikar haya. He denied fundamental beliefs. Ksiv Hacha Avru Bris says that Adam violated the covenant. And what's the bris? Ksiv Hasam V'Amru Allah Shar was bris Hashem Elokeim. Bris is referred to as the covenant between God, that the belief in God.
That's
It's
kind of
not
hard to
Hasam.
understand because God spoke to him. He was the Gan Eden, and he's the one who really had first revelation of God. So say not to
Uh-huh.
believe in God, this is kind of strange.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Well, there's the belief, the fundamental thing is the belief in other gods, and maybe the other gods didn't speak to him, but why did Adam sin in the first place? If God told him what to do, then why didn't he do it? By not listening, that implies a lack of obedience, or even the Gemara is implying a lack of belief in the nature of God.
What did he do that God told him not to eat from that? He was, as we just learned a few minutes ago, he was seduced by the woman, right? To eat the
Yeah,
fruit.
yeah, okay,
So,
but it still has responsibility. I mean, he's still punished for it. Tanan Hassan, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, have a shaku lil Torah, be diligent in learning Torah, v'dama shetashu lapikaris, and know what to respond to a heretic. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, loshanu ala pikaris ovid kochavim. We're talking about an idol worshiper, a pagan, aval pikaris Yisrael, but a Jewish apostate, kol shekain defakar tfei. Um, uh, um, um, he like don't I think he's saying don't bother trying to refute a Jewish heretic because um uh, well the because he's at least um a pagan heretic you maybe could convince of something, but someone who has already considered the Jewish point of view and rejected it, you're not going to have a chance. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Kol makom shepakru haminim, wherever
so you're saying that in this case it's lahachis, right? That the
well, not
Jews.
lachis, but it was done intentionally. It was like you not only are you an apikaris, but you rejected what you were taught, right? So somebody who was never taught, maybe you can convince him of something. But someone who was taught and then rejected what he was taught, how are you going to convince him to change his mind?
So maybe he is
You could
lahachis.
make the other argument too. Look, I don't know. You could argue it either way, but that's what this Gemara is stating.
Oh, you could argue that you should convince the
I could
Jews.
argue that, well, at least somebody has, has the knowledge. Maybe he was led astray. Maybe you could, you could lead him back to the path. But that's not the position of this Gemara.
I'm almost thinking that this person, the Jewish Apikoros, is doing this lahachis, and you're not going to be successful with him.
Okay.
Yeah, there are different points of view here.
Yeah. Amar B'Yachnon, Kol Makom Shepakar Aminim, wherever heretics used have support in meaning in the Torah for their heresy. Shuvasam B'Tzion, there's another pasuk right there which can disprove them. For example, Nasa Adam Etzalmenu. The Torah says, "Let us make man." So people could make the mistake that it's in plural, right? That there's more than one God. So V'yomer, but then it says Vayivra Elohim es Adam etzalmo. God created man, so in the singular. Havan Erev Anav Hashem Sasam. Another case where God uses the about himself the plural. Also says Vayir Hashem Liros Yirves Amigal. God went down in the singular to see the city and the tower. Kisham Niglu Elav Elohim, when Yaakov built a mizbeach, where there God was revealed to him in the plural, and then it also says El Sarasi in the singular, God who answered me on my in the time of my trouble.
But it's interesting. We use the phrase Elohim to mean judges, right? So that's a plural. We had the whole discussion before, and here one could say Vayivra Elohim et Adam b'tzalmo. You could say, well, we're talking about plural. I mean, this is
Yeah,
using
but the
as a
verb,
proof to say that singular, but you
but the
could
verb
say
isn't singular. The verb
you.
is
Oh,
vayivra.
right. That's right. That is the verb is not. But sometimes we use even a singular verb like vayavo am, for instance, right? And the am is means plural.
Hmm.
And the Torah uses a singular verb, even though the noun is it's right. So the noun could be represent plural. So
Hmm.
that's not exact either.
Right. Um, I suppose, but the Gemara is focusing on the verb, not the noun. Not,
Okay.
not a very good answer, but that's the best I can give you. Okay. Um, and similarly, Kimi Gagadol Shalom Krovim Elav. Krovim is plural. Kashem Elokeinu B'chol Karenu Elav. Like God, who we call to Him in singular. Another example: Mikam Yisrael Goyachad Baaretz Asher Holchu Elohim. The land which God walked on, plural. Lifdos Lo La'am, to redeem in singular His nation. Ad di Karsavan Ramiv. This is a passage from Daniel. I watched until the thrones were set up. He's talking about some celestial vision he had. So uh, uh, Krasavan is the plural for thrones. The Atik Yamin Yasav, and the Ancient of Days, meaning God, sat singular. Hanach Lama, Lamali. So, like, what did you use plural for in the first place? Kid Rabbi Yochanan, the Rabbi Yochanan, in the Koshbar Hu Osa Davar, Ella Im Ken Nimlach B'Pamal Yeshal Malak. God doesn't do anything until he consults with his royal retinue. Shenemar Bigzeras Irin Piskama Uvamemar Kadishin Sheelta. By decree of those who are awake, is things are done, and by the word of the holy ones is the sentence. So again from Daniel, referring to some celestial vision of a whole heavenly court that
So
God
he
consults with.
so he consults with them, but earlier we learned if he doesn't like what they say, he destroys them.
Yeah, right, right. Hatina chulu. Okay, so that answers like all of those plural verbs except one. Adi karsavan ramiv. What about the multiple thrones? Michael and Mamar, right? Why are there multiple thrones if there's only one God? What's the point of setting it up that way? So the Gemara says echad lovi, echad David, one for God and one for David Hamelech. Tanya, echad lovi, echad David. We have a brisa. Divrei Rabbi Akiva. Amar Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi said to him, Akiva, masayat osa shchinachol. How long are you going to profane God? Right? Elul echad l'din v'echad l'tzedakah. It's not a throne for God and a throne for David. That's blasphemy. It's one. It's a throne for God in His mode of justice, and one throne for God in his mode of charity. Did Rabbi Akiva accept that reinterpretation? Tashma, Titania, we have a brisa. Echad ludim v'echad tzedakah. One throne was for justice, and one was for charity. Divrei Rabbi Akiva. That's what Rabbi Akiva said. So apparently he did accept what Rabbi Yossi told him. Amar Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. So Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah said to him, Akiva malachaytzel agada. What are you doing? Discussing agada for? Kalachaytzel negoyim v'yalos. Go back to your study of the details of afflictions and tumantara. That's your specialty. Don't mix into this idea, because um, that's also not appropriate. The one for justice and one for tzedakah. Ella echad l'kisei v'echad l'shraf. One throne was the chair, like the throne that God sits on. The other is a footstool. Um, Kisei leishev alav, the chair to sit on, shrafel hadam raglav, and the stool for God's feet. What is that supposed to mean? I have no idea. Amar Rav Nachman, Haimon diyada lahadure leminim kurav idis. Anybody who can answer heretics like Ravinis le'adar, then he can respond. If you low, but if you're not as good at responding to apikarsim as Ravinis, lo le'adar, don't bother answering. Amromi and Ravidis. Whose was Ravidis? Like, what was so good about his responses? The heretic said to him, it says he said, and to Moshe he said, "Go up to God." Right. So using the third person, Ale Eli Mibai. Should have used the first person. If God's speaking to Moshe, God says, "Come up to me," not "Go up to God." Right. Go up to God implies there's a third party. That God is that there's another God. Amarle Zo Amarle, so Ravidis answered him, Zo Matatron Sheshmo Kashem Rabo. This was an angel, Matatron, whose name was also Hashem. It was a little weird. Dichsiv Kishmi Bikirbo, as it says when God says to Moshe, I'm going to send an angel to escort you to Eretz Canaan. I'm not going to go with you, but I'm going to send an angel, and my name is in him. So in other words, there's this angel whose name is the same as God's name. So then, if that angel is God, then we should also worship that God. Ksiv al tamerbo. Uh, in discussing that angel, God says, don't, it really means don't revolt against him, but we could also interpret that word tamer means don't exchange with him, meaning ultimately rainbow. Don't exchange me, God, for him, this angel. Um, so then the next thing it says is ki lo yisal lefi sheichem. He's not going to forgive your sins. Lamali. Then what do you need him for? What do you need the angel for? Amalei hemnusa biyadan. Um, that's Hemnusa Biyada. That's our belief, that this angel doesn't have any power. Dafilu b'farvanka name lo kabline. Um, and so we don't even accept him as God's messenger. Dichsiv, Vayomer Elav, Moshe said to God, "Imein panech olchim, al taleinu mizeh." If you're not coming with us, then don't bother. So we weren't taken in, or we weren't attracted to this angel who is supposed to be some kind of a substitute for or representative of God.
I don't understand the talk with this angel. So it's this God. Is God a point? God says this has the same name as my name, and then he says we shouldn't worship
It's
him.
very weird. Yeah.
I mean, and then I'm beginning to think, what name does he have? In this week's Torah portion, the beginning of the Torah portion, and Rashi comments on this, that they didn't know me b'shakai, right? And so they knew
Yeah.
me by a different name because and Rashi goes on because he didn't fulfill his promises and so forth. So that's one
Hmm.
name of God. Then there's Yud K and Vav K. Then there's Elohim, and then Hashem. Well, what name would this angel have? Which one of those names?
Great question. You got me. I don't understand any of this. It's all very um, it's all very esoteric. I don't know Mina or Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi. I mean, if you want to know more, maybe I'm sure like the Maharsha probably is the first place that you could look for trying to understand what this is all about. Amalei Umino Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi. Apikaris said to Rabbi Shmuel, "Ksiv Hashem himtir al Sodom v'al gafri sveish me'es Hashem." God rained down on Sodom and Amora sulfur and fire from God. So again, it's the third person. Me'ito mi violation said from himself. Amalei hahu koves. So there was a dry cleaner there, a launderer there, and who spoke up. Shavke. Let him be. I know I'm Mahadran Alay. I'll answer, said the launderer. Adchsi vayomer lemech lenashav adav etzila sheman koli neshay lemech hazeinim rasi. So when Lemech spoke to his wives, he referred to the wives of Lemech. So does that mean there was another Lemech? Nashai mivayilei. According to you, it should have said my wives, not Lemech's wives. Why refer to himself in the third person? El mishtoi krai hachi. That's how language is. That's the way the Torah speaks sometimes. It's a poetic form. You could say the same thing here when it says Hashem himtir me'es Hashem. It's just a way of writing it. That you shouldn't read too much into it. Amalei minolach. Rabbi Shmuel says, "How'd you get so smart?" Mi pirkei Rabbi Meir Shemili. He says, "I learned it from Rabbi Meir." Dior Rabbi Yochanan. Ki hava darish Rav Meir v'pirkei, when Rav Meir would give his shir, hava darish tilsa shemata. He would divide his lecture into three. Tilsa shemata, a third was halacha. Tilsa agada, a third was agada, and tilsa masle, and a third was like allegories. Rabbi Yochanan, Gimel Meos Mishalos Shualim Hayulo Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir had 300 parables just about foxes. Vanu Ein Lanu Elashal. So we only remember three of them. Avos Yochlu Boser V'Shine Habanim Tikena. Fathers have eaten grapes that are not ripe, and the children suffer for it. The children's teeth are set on edge. Mosnei Tzedek, Avnei Tzedek. That was another one another story that he liked to tell about justice, just weights, and Tzadik Mitzara Nechalatz Vayovo Rasha Tachtov. That the righteous person is saved from trouble, and it goes to the Rasha instead.
Interesting.
So
Chooses one from the Navi, and one from Chumash, and one from Ketuvim. Isn't that Ketuvim or not?
yeah, it's probably from Mishlei.
Mishnah.
And so there's a long Rashi here which tells the actual parable. So I'll summarize if you like. So there's a fox and a wolf. The fox tells the fox tells the wolf, if you want a good meal, then go to the Jews on Erev Shabbos, and they'll invite you for Shabbos. The wolf tries to go to the Jewish courtyard, and they drive they send him away. They beat him away. So the wolf is angry at the fox. The fox says, "Oh no, it's not. It's not my fault. It's because of your father. Because your father once did this, and he ate up all the food." The wolf says, "What? I was punished because of my father." And so the fox says, "Yes, that's the avos yochlu boser v'shina abanim tikana." Um, so the fox says, "But you know what? Come with me, and I'll show you a place where you can eat." So they go to a well. Um, so there's a rope with two buckets at the end. The fox gets into the bucket and goes down into the well. And the wolf says, "What are you doing down there?" And the fox says, "There's food here." And the wolf says, "How can I get down there?" So the fox says, "Well, get into the other bucket. You'll go down, and I'll go up." And then the wolf is down there at the bottom. There's no food, and the wolf says, "How do I get back up?" So the fox answers, "Tzadik mitzar nachlatz." Who's the tzaddik in this allegory? I was saved from peril, being in the well, and you took my place. Okay, so now you know the parables of Rabbi Meir. And we will stop here for today. Everybody have a good Shabbos. I'm going to be in Israel for 2 weeks, so David is going to be taking over Mondays and Tuesdays. So look forward to returning and picking it up again in February.
It'll be a little warmer there, right?
I expect so. Hope so.
Have a good Shabbos, good trip.
Good
Have a
Shabbos,
good
everybody.
trip.
Thank you.
Have a good
Bye.
trip.